What do you expect when you are on holiday in Los Angeles? To see all iconic landmarks, the world's best-known attractions, and maybe a visit to the Hollywood film industry? I bet the last thing you'd anticipate is a murder. What happened to Lesley Herring in Los Angeles? How did an extraordinary step of prosecuting a person for murder without a corpse happen? Welcome back to Mystery Resolved, where we uncover the previously unheard stories of murder and violence, and the forgotten victims who can no longer speak out. On behalf of those silent voices, we're going to take you through some of the darkest and most underreported cases. Strap in for episode 1, and get ready to see the unknown faces of true crime. Without any further ado, let's dive right in. Our story starts in Los Angeles. Lesley Herring immigrated to the United States with her family as a small child, searching for a better life. Her parents wanted to provide an opportunity for Lesley and her baby sister, Asha Davis, to pursue the American dream. That is precisely what the kids did. They all moved on to create something bigger for themselves. Lesley Herring held a desk job at Simplex Grinnell, a Los Angeles-based fire alarm and security business. Even after Lesley got married, she seldom missed a day at that small security agency in the Hollywood area. She kept that as a habit. Her habit included her daily morning calls to her mother for praying and keeping her house perfect. Her sister Asha Davis became a well-known American actress through her outstanding performance in Waverly Grady on Friday Night Lights and Chelsea Lewis on South of Nowhere. Lesley's husband, Lyle Herring, worked as a Cal State Northridge College recruiter. 44-year-old Lesley and 56-year-old Lyle Herring appeared to be the ideal pair for everyone. They were crazy in love, as they put it. The pair looked like something out of a storybook to many. The couple resided in a high-end Hollywood condominium building and seemed to be living the dream. The couple's friends and family didn't realize that problems were growing inside their marriage, which would have grave consequences. Both Lyle and Lesley seemed successful and happy when they lived in Hollywood until 2009, when everything changed. It was early February 2009. It was the month when the mild winter weather of Los Angeles met the blue skies to offer spectacular sunsets from the beach. But unfortunately, that was the day Lesley and Lyle Herring vanished without a trace. Davis got a call from Lesley's boss. The boss informed Davis that her sister hadn't shown up to work in 2 days. Unsurprisingly, it sent Davis into a state of panic and confusion. It didn't sound like Lesley to her. Lesley Herring was a person of consistent habits. She did everything in the same way, every time. She did not go anywhere without informing her friends and family. And it was rare for Davis to hear Lesley deviating from her habits. Lesley's family realized that something bad must have happened immediately. Lesley had not missed a single day of work in almost 11 years. And the fact that neither Lesley nor Lyle were answering their phones prompted them to call the Hollywood Police Department. The cops arrived at the residence of the seemingly happy couple as soon as they were informed of the alarming scenario. They found nothing unusual in the house. But, Lesley's beloved jewelry, which she never left the house without, was still on her nightstand. That was a negative sign for Lesley's mother. The worst part was that neither Lesley nor Lyle Herring could be found. Police were looking for a massive break after the missing person inquiry had been stalled. And barely 2 weeks after Lesley's disappearance, they got a breakthrough via Davis. She tried reaching Lyle through emails, to which Lyle responded to the ones that were solely focused on him. Lyle, with his distinctive dreadlocks shaved off, was in the Mexican vacation town of Rosarito Beach during the week following his wife's disappearance. He seemed to be inquiring about owning a nightclub. In this instance, the Hollywood Police Department's another major break came when Lyle Herring was apprehended in his car while attempting to enter the United States from Mexico. Police drove to the border right away to question Lyle about his wife's location. To everyone's dismay, he told the detectives that he didn't know where his wife was. He claimed they both had planned a trip to Mexico for Valentine's Day, but they had a fight before they departed, and she fled. So he decided to travel to Mexico to check whether she had arrived before him. A last-minute trip without informing her family or her employer? It seemed improbable for a lady described by family members as a dependable, careful planner who would never leave on vacation without providing a copy of her travel schedule to her family. Lesley, who had recently become a new aunt with the birth of Davis's kid, was so emphatic that she would never abandon her old mother, siblings, or the employees who relied on her for their weekly paychecks. When those employees moved on or retired, they handed her their hard hats as a token of their devotion. She maintained them on a shelf above her desk with care. How could such a woman leave her loved ones in pain? Here is where Lesley's mother gave a critical statement, mentioning that Lesley had discussed leaving her husband. Unaware of these simultaneous happenings and statements, Lyle abruptly ended the conversation with the detectives after roughly 30 minutes. Lyle later informed the authorities that he owed money to some suspicious people, which might have been the reason for his wife's abduction. Lyle's shaved hair and goatee made the LAPD investigator Chris Gable exceedingly suspicious. And it went on when Lyle gave another tale where some crooks he owed money to had caught up with him and shaved his hair and goatee off as a punishment. Chris Gable had worked against gangs for several years and had never heard of gang members holding someone down and forcing them to shave their head and goatee, so it was definitely a first. Lyle believed that his story was convincing the cops, but he had no idea that the cops were looking for a suspect of their own. None other than Lyle himself. With no more leads in their investigation, detectives once again decided to examine Lyle and Lesley's house. And what they discovered will shock many people. They discovered a Starbucks transaction dated 3 days after Lesley had vanished. Lyle was the one who went out and bought the coffee, according to the transactions at the Starbucks. They eventually deduced that Lyle was attempting to hide his traces. And, as expected, the suspect's alibi was shaky. The police took Lyle's laptop and phone during the search. They discovered that 4 days after Lesley's disappearance, a call from her phone was made to Lyle. Lyle allegedly sought to make it appear as though Lesley had been phoning him after she vanished by making calls from her cell phone to his. But he forgot that the cops could check mobile phone tower activity and demonstrate that the calls were made with both phones side by side. Police concluded that Lyle was holding the two phones near each other throughout the call after looking at the cell tower data. Lyle also had a search history that featured some crucial keywords. Lyle seemed to plot his escape at the same time and also began searching the internet for terms like US-Mexico border, US-Texas-Mexico border, and do I need a passport? He also looked up which country do I flee to? And what's the weather like in Belize? On the internet. This confirmed that Lyle had done something to his wife. Murder trials without the presence of a body are uncommon but not unheard of. According to one unofficial estimate, there have been 300 similar incidents in the United States. Prosecutors have unique challenges in such prosecutions, which sometimes rely primarily on circumstantial evidence, making convictions challenging to obtain. On March 14, Los Angeles prosecutors took the similar extraordinary step of prosecuting Lesley's husband for murder without a corpse. During opening comments in March, Deputy District Attorney Sam Hohlefeld remarked, "Don't expect to see Lesley Herring's body. There isn't one. We are unable to make one for you. And we're going to beg you to refrain from rewarding the defendant for it." Even though the police suspected Lyle of being involved in his wife's disappearance, they required more proof to prosecute him with murder. However, the cops then received yet another significant break. Lyle's cousin, Marvin Thomas, came forward and stated he had a chat with Lyle just 2 days after Lesley vanished. Thomas testified that Lyle told him he was weary of everything and wanted to check out, and later that he committed something for which he would burn in hell. According to Thomas' testimony, Lyle carried a pistol holster around his ankle. It terrified Thomas, and he didn't want to say something stupid because he was unsure of what would have occurred. But, perhaps most disturbing of all, Thomas stated that Lyle stuffed a large plastic bag in the back of his car with what seemed to be a woman's maroon sweater, white tennis shoes, and a pair of blue trousers. Furthermore, when Lyle's cousin wanted to use the restroom in Lyle and Lesley's condo, Lyle didn't allow him. When the cops returned to Lyle's unit for a second search, they discovered something strange. In the bathroom, a towel was wrinkled and possibly had mildew on it. The jigsaw pieces began to fall into place almost immediately for the investigators. Lyle may have drowned his wife. After that, Lyle Herring's trial had almost a dozen witnesses. Maria Minando, a real estate agent, said that Lyle said that he had money and he would be a millionaire. He added that he couldn't get money right now, but he'd be able to get it soon. They obtained another significant break in the inquiry days after Lyle's neighbor came forward to authorities. Lyle and Lesley's next-door neighbor stated he observed Lyle bringing out a wrapped-up carpet on a dolly on the night of Lesley's disappearance on February 7. A neighbor also observed Lyle sweating profusely and agitated. After gathering this extraordinary evidence, the cops brought in special dogs to sniff Lyle's 2 cars. When the dogs smelled both vehicles, there were indications that something wasn't quite right from the get-go. This only furthered their suspicions. A cadaver dog called Indiana Bones alerted to human decomposition in Herring's trunks. Herring's pocketbook, identity cards, keys, $26,000, mobile phone, and ATM card were discovered in the trunk of her gated Hollywood Hills condo's 1998 red Toyota Corolla. After this breakthrough, Lyle had been identified as the assailant by the police. During the next few days, Lyle's travels were tracked by authorities using a gadget installed on his car. At the time, authorities were still looking for where Lyle could have discarded Lesley's body. After that, they figured it out. Lyle went to a dumpster in a park 2 miles from the couple's ostensibly happy house. But unfortunately, detectives and search teams were unsuccessful in their hunt for the body. Despite the difficulties of pursuing a case with no corpse, Lyle was arrested for the murder of his wife 14 months after she vanished. Lyle has entered a not guilty plea. According to attorney Marvin Hamilton, the case was based entirely on shaky circumstantial evidence. According to prosecutors, he allegedly began covering his tracks right away. To corroborate his wife's tales, he inserted a Starbucks receipt in Lesley's purse, dated 2 days after she was last seen, as part of his elaborate deception to the police. Lyle was also caught on a Starbucks security film buying a cup of coffee. He also contacted her mother and left a message wondering about Lesley's whereabouts. Then, during a press conference in March with her family and police, he played the role of a distressed spouse. Finally, Lyle was sentenced to 15 years to life in jail for the murder of his loving wife, Lesley. Lyle is currently lodged in the state jail in Tehachapi, California. There is no proof that the pair got into an argument or that Lesley said or did anything to irritate Lyle. Those unspeakable remain unanswered. This was a story of a cunning husband who tried to get away with murdering an innocent wife thoughtlessly and brutally. It's the story of how a typical middle-aged lady vanished without a trace, never to be seen or heard from again because the husband who murdered her was successful in disposing of her body. And it's about how that spouse began to assess his alternatives with no remorse, search for a way out, and plot his escape from punishment.